What's up, my friends? This is Getting Miles here, and in this video, first I just want to ask how are all of y'all doing? Because stressful out there, and I just want to make sure all of you are doing great. And I appreciate all the new subscribers that I've been getting lately. I really appreciate meeting each and every one of you. But we're gonna get into this video. In this video, we're gonna talk about why I think Chris Redfield looks different in the new Resident Evil 8 Village trailer. As you've seen from the trailer, or if you haven't seen, I'll include images. Chris looks different. He looks like his old bulky self again, back from Resident Evil 5 and 6. Although he looks a little older in the face. Now, there are three scenarios of why I think he may look different than he did in Resident Evil 7. As you know, they changed his face in RE7 and people were like, what the freak? This is not Chris. Give me back my old bulky Chris. And he's back, but how and why? Well, there's three scenarios. The first scenario is that the Chris that we see in Resident Evil 7 was actually Chris's son. Now, I know that sounds really weird, but I'll explain in a second. The second scenario is that in Resident Evil 8, the trailer, that could have been a flashback between Chris and Ethan. And the third scenario is that the developers just redesigned them again, because fans wanted the old design of Chris back, which is completely valid. And that scenario doesn't really need too much explaining because, they redesigned them back to how he originally looked, and, hopefully fans would be happier. So I'm going to talk about scenario 1 and 2. Now, the first scenario is that the Redfield that we saw in Resident Evil 7 was actually Chris's son. Now, this would mean that Chris would have had to have... See, the problem with this theory is that Redfield looks too old to be an ordinary teenager. Because if Chris were to have a son back in 98 with who knows who Chris was relation... Who knows who was in a relationship with Chris, but if we were to have a son in 1998, that would make the Redfield person in Resident Evil 7 19 years old, because Resident Evil 7 takes place in 2017. Now, does that look like a 19-year-old to you? Not really. I mean, sure, there's the case of some 19-year-olds looking older. Is this true? Who knows? I mean, it's a theory that's not 100% invalid. And who knows, Chris could have had a child earlier, because Chris is 25 in Resident Evil 1, and we never knew anything about Chris's home life and stuff like that. So he could have had a son back in the mid-90s who grew up to be an agent like his dad. And he took over for his dad when his dad went to retirement or whatnot. Well, he didn't really go into retirement because in Resident Evil 6, he was still in the forces, so... Maybe his son just joined, just joined the task force and joined New Umbrella, Neo Umbrella, whatever. No, Blue Umbrella. Is it called Blue Umbrella? I'm not entirely sure. It has blue or purple in the Umbrella logo, so. Well, that's scenario 1. In scenario 2, that could have been a flashback. Now, in the trailer, that could have been a previous memory of Ethan, where Chris shot Ethan's old wife before he met Mia.
Chris? Sorry, Ethan. Why?
The only problem with this one, though, before I get into the problem, though, we know that Resident Evil 8 is supposed to be a dark and gruesome game. So maybe we'll get some more of Ethan's past. And in this past, he has a long and kind of twisted connection to Chris. However, the problem with this theory is that if that's true, and that scene in the trailer takes place before Resident Evil 7, why would Chris introduce himself to Ethan as, "I'm Redfield, glad we found you"?
I'm Redfield. I'm glad we found you.
Why would he need to introduce himself to Ethan again? That doesn't make sense. As soon as Chris would take the helmet off, Ethan would be like, "Chris, finally, you here?" I mean, he does say, "What took you guys so long?" but he doesn't say like, "Oh man, Chris, I'm so glad to see you," or whatnot. Oh man. And then why would Chris, like I say, introduce himself to Ethan again if he already knows who he is? So I think that scenario is completely out the window. I mean, technically they could have some kind of plot twist thing or some kind of, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, it seemed kind of valid initially thinking about it, but the more you explain it, you know, it doesn't seem right. So scenario 1 is kind of good, with Chris being the son, that new Redfield being the son of the original Chris. Or even though it seems kind of impossible, that could be the Chris in the Resident Evil 8 trailer could be a flashback Chris. And then the new Chris that we saw in Resident Evil 7 could have been Chris but older. You know, he lost some weight, you know, he lost some of his muscle mass. But then the other thing is, in the trailer, he looked a little older. Like, Chris was bulky, but he looked older in the face. So that could be another reason why scenario 2 is kind of out of the window too. And the third scenario, which is probably the most valid, is that the developers just redesigned Chris again. And that's that. You know, they redesigned him to look more like how he originally looked, which is not a problem at all. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And let me know if you think that's Mia. Like, did Chris shoot Mia in the trailer or not? I'd like to know what you guys think. I always like to have a discussion with you guys, connecting with you guys. That's one of the reasons why, you know, I make these videos, is to connect with you guys. So let me know what you guys think below. And as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.